This video looks at the history of Norwich's theatres, past and present. The site we now know as the Theatre Royal began life in 1758 as the Concert Hall. By 1825 the building was in a poor state of repair and a bigger theatre was needed. This opened in 1826 at a cost of £6,000 and could house an audience of about 1,000 people. In 1903 it was briefly renamed the Hippodrome, reverting to the Theatre Royal the following year. This was the internal view in the 1930s before disaster struck in 1934 when a fire destroyed the building. This is the front of the theatre after the fire, and this is the view from behind. A new Theatre Royal opened in 1936. It was said that the sentimental regrets at the passing of the old theatre are more than balanced by the great advantages of the new. This is how the theatre looked in 2001, and this is the 2023 view. The only plaque on the frontage celebrates Richard Hearn, known as Mr. Pastry, who lived in Ladies' Lane opposite the theatre and now part of the Forum site. Also opposite the theatre was, appropriately enough, the Shakespeare Pub until it closed in 1960. This is the back of the theatre in 1955. The area to the left is now the site of Stage 2, providing a studio theatre and rehearsal areas. Next to the Theatre Royal is the Assembly House, seen here in 1951. If we look closely above the door in the West Wing in 2023, we can see the word Novere. This refers to a cinema which had been located in this building from 1950 until 1992. From 2005 until the COVID pandemic, this had been the home of the Great Hall Players performing theatre in the round. Mistakenly, I had thought that this was the Great Hall, but that actually refers to the home of the founder, Donald Pyle, which was the Great Hall in Oak Street. Before the Assembly House, the Great Hall Players had performed in the Baker's Arms in Hayham Street, the Friends Meeting House in Uppergoat Lane, and St Peter's Hall in Park Lane. What has the South Asia collection in Bethel Street got to do with theatres? As we trace the building back through time, this was 2001, but from 1898 until 1993 it was a warehouse for Lacey and Lincoln builders merchants. Between 1882 and 1892 the Salvation Army used the building for their meetings, but it had been built in 1876 as a skating rink, before being converted to a theatre and being used as such for just 3 or 4 years. We mentioned earlier the Theatre Royal being named the Hippodrome between 1903 and 1904. In 1904 the Grand Opera House in St Giles was renamed the Hippodrome and would go on to host Laurel and Hardy, Charlie Chaplin and Gracie Fields before being closed in 1960 and replaced by a car park. In the early 20th century, Nugent Monk founded the Norwich Players, who performed at the Music House in King Street. He then purchased an 18th century former Catholic chapel, which was converted into the Madder Market Theatre in 1921. This is the theatre in 1936, and here it is, slightly obscured in 2023. This is the view from the gallery in the 1930s with a slightly smaller stage than at present, and looking back at that point currently looks like this in 2023. Looking from St George's Bridge, somewhere behind those trees is the Playhouse, a 300-seat theatre dating from 1995. The 19th century building is seen here in 1974. It was once the site of a maltings and the Norwich Mercury and is seen here in 2023. St James's Church is seen here from what is now Whitefriars in 1938. It became Norwich Puppet Theatre in 1979 and is one of only 3 building-based puppet theatres in England. Sewell Barn Theatre is located in the grounds of Sewell Park Academy. Originally the barn belonged to Clare House, which was owned by Philip Sewell, brother of Anna, author of Black Beauty. It was originally used as a theatre in the First World War, but had various subsequent uses before becoming Sewell Barn Theatre in 1980. St Swithin's Church on St Benedict Street is seen here in 1937, and in 1980 became Norwich Art Center, used for music and theatre. The Art Centre had previously been known as Premises and took over the former Bywell shop seen here in 1975.